we're in a creative industry, and the creative industry is meant to inspire. And a
Yeah.
lot of people kind of can shy away from sharing their success. And like the word gatekeep comes up a lot.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Cloud Machine podcast. My name is Mat Landry, and in this 64th episode, I'm here with Alexandra Lutz-Higgins. Throughout the podcast, we discuss lighting, programming, touring, the ins and outs of her job, being a woman in tech, her origin story, music industry, and so much more. We also play the Dreamfest game. Thanks for listening. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Cloud Machine podcast, a platform that allows us to learn more about the music industry through conversations with artists, people in the behind the scenes, music business individuals, creatives, and much more. This podcast is brought to you by Eights, a musical direction and playback company out of Toronto. Our goal with this podcast is to create a network and shine a light on all the stuff that is happening in the music world, topics and realities that are gatekept, and the people and roles that may be often overlooked. This week, I have the immense pleasure of welcoming Alexandra Lutz-Higgins to the podcast. She is a US-based lighting designer and operator. You may have seen her work if you've been to a Noah Kahan show, a Charlie XCX show, a Remy Wolf show, or a Laney show. Probably, and much more, I'm sure. I met Al for the first time through the Charlie XCX camp, and her energy and openness really made an impression and impact on our team, which was the LEO team. We recently reconnected in the fall at the Noah Kahan show here at the Budweiser stage in Toronto. And while thinking about potential guests on the podcast, she's always come up in conversation. So I'm very excited to be able to chat with her today. Please welcome to the podcast, Al. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm so good. I'm really honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. It's been a while.
Yeah.
That show was, I think it's September or October, if I remember correctly. So it's been a long time.
In a
A lot to,
minute. Yeah.
yeah, and a lot to catch up on. But let's start the podcast how we always start the podcast. Your favorite live show experience ever as a fan? What
Love
you
this
got?
question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So before I ever joined the industry, I went to an Avett Brothers show, and I've been to so many Avett Brothers shows. They're one of my favorite bands ever.
Okay.
And it's in Vermont. I was working at a summer camp at the time, and all of my camp friends, we had, the weekend off, and we all go there. And it was absolutely torrential downpouring. It's an outdoor venue at Shelburne Farms. And what was just so notable is that I didn't see one person in the entire crowd that wasn't having the absolute best night of their life. And every single person was dancing with a stranger, just like singing so loudly. And at one point, I forget, I think it was Bill, who I think is the bassist.
Okay.
He was leaving or doing something, I don't actually know, but some fan organized and cut out like hundreds of paper hearts that said Bill on it and just handed them out. And so in the absolute pouring rain, everyone holds up this little heart that says Bill, and they were so surprised on stage. And it was just like a moment where pure joy was so magnetic and just reminded me of why concerts are like a very important part of society. And I
Yes.
love it. Yes.
Fantastic. And
Yeah.
how long ago was this?
This must have been probably in like 2014 or something.
10 years.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a 10-year anniversary of that show. It's fantastic.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And now let's fast forward to now, because you mentioned that being before you entered the industry.
Yes.
I want to ask about a tour or a project or work that would best represent you for those who don't know you, or the work that you're most proud of.
Yeah. I think definitely my most recent tour with Noah Kahan, I feel really, really proud of. And I think has just kind of exploded my career in a lot of ways and given me a lot of confidence in my style.
Yeah.
It can be kind of hard to figure out as a creative what your style is. You're intaking so much
Oh, yeah.
creative inspiration from all around you. And so you really have to like hone in what direction you want to go. And I think that with Noah, I got a lot of clarity and what I feel really confident in, what I need to work on. And I love that
Yeah.
show. I loved making art with him. And I think we all created something really, really beautiful. And
Yeah.
it was an honor to be with him for that year. And it's a time I'll never forget.
Yeah. And I want to touch on something that you just said, in regards to like creating work and, I guess finding your own like voice in it. Cause
Yeah.
I have, you know, I guess now working more for artists and having a lot of different clients at once, it's hard um, to sort of insert your own voice or find your own voice in somebody else's work because you're basically creating for their show, a
Yes.
lot of the time. How have you found that, and why do you think specifically for the Noah Khan show, or tour rather, that you found your voice or your style?
Mhm. I think I grew alongside of him, and that
Yeah.
was something that helped a lot. I think it's really important as creatives to be very adaptable to other
Yes.
people's visions. And I think what was so powerful about Noah is like he added a lot of songs from like the start of our tour to the end. And so it gave me the chance to really grow with him and find my voice with him. And I
Yeah.
know that sort of on a new tour, I'm going to have to relearn how that dynamic is going to go again.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that's a beautiful part of the touring industry, but I think specifically with Noah, we grew together and that's how I kind of learned my style with him.
Mhm.
And I feel like specifically with Noah, his music, we're both from Vermont actually. And so he sings
Yeah.
a lot about the Northeast. And so I think I could really understand the world that he created. And it was really awesome to illustrate that.
Yeah. No, I'm sure. And you've been saying that you've been growing alongside Noah and stuff. And for
Yeah.
I always think about the listeners when I'm, hosting this podcast or whatever, however you want to call it, having these conversations. And I want to ask about, specifically about the growth period, because not a lot of people might not know that this is like a long period of time. Like, how long were you with Noah, and what was the beginning, process like compared to like the last few shows?
Ooh. So I was with him for a year.
Yeah.
And I remember I was so excited for that show, for the tour to start. Um,
Yeah. Were you a
I
fan before?
totally, totally.
Oh, okay, okay,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, yeah.
okay.
Um, a fan, but also like I think for me, the word fan means something very different than it does to other people. I think
Yeah.
I'm super, super inspired by music
Mm,
artistically. And I think when I think of like my fandom towards Noah or other artists that I really like, it's because I'm really inspired by them and can
right.
want to create art alongside them. But yeah, with Noah, it was a lot of moving parts in the beginning. There were a lot of changes that were made, and so the beginning was just a big learning curve for I think everyone, every department.
Right.
There it was also Noah exploded his touring very, very quickly,
Yeah. That was
which
nuts.
which is very prominent. And so everyone was going through sort of growing pains. And as was I was really learning like what was working, what wasn't, could there be changes that are made, or are these decisions final? And I think what's really notable about the whole Noah experience is it never stopped growing and changing.
Yeah.
We did a whole summer, and in that summer, a lot of kind of lighting rig changes were made, songs were added, songs were cut. Then in the fall, we went to Europe and we went from really big venues to really small clubs, and that was totally new. And then
Yeah.
we did like Australia and Europe again earlier this year, which were big venues again, and we had a whole new rig. And so it was constantly evolving. And so
Yes.
here, while the end shows were like, I was feeling more comfortable, every day there were new things that were coming up. And he was adding songs until the very last show, which was incredible for him to
Right.
do, for me to do alongside him.
Yeah. And you talk about the adaptability of a show throughout like let's say an era. Like this, I would say like this is would be I don't know if it's this is probably the right word, but it's like the stick season era, stick
Oh,
season
totally. Oh,
album.
that's what I call it.
There
Yeah.
you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's wild to see that, and we see with other artists, but like Noah's been touring in North America for quite a long time,
Yeah.
and just over the last like year and a half now, blowing up quite fast. And just like the adaptability of being able to do, big theater runs. Now going into arenas, or
Yeah.
he's been in arenas now, but also like let's say when you're in new territories like Europe, or Australia or something, that you have to readapt your show to like the smaller club. How did you see that through that year with Noah, and like what are some of the major things that you have to think about, um in those changes and in those
Mhm.
venues?
Yeah. I think what was really helpful is that from the start of our tour last year, I got a lot of say in the programming, and the show file really became my own. And so when
Yeah.
we had to make these changes, when we had to scale down massively, I was like very, very familiar with what the show was supposed to look like. And so when we would go into small clubs, I could really go into a day being like, okay, I know that this venue doesn't have any capacity to have these types of lights that have these effects in this song. So I have to really go and look in this specific song
Right.
and sure that something takes its place. And I think having that creative freedom and creative responsibility um,
Hmm.
was really helpful in doing that. And I'm really grateful for the trust that that whole team put in me.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that was one of the big reasons why every night we'd have a show that looked, it was different kind of every night, but it held a lot of the same feeling. And that's because I knew the show so well
Yeah.
and got so much control over those changes.
Yeah. I feel it's so important to be able to do that, because his career is like blown up over the last year and a half, and to have those people in place that could do that, I think it's great. So congrats. We have a quote segment on the podcast, last year for those listening. Or maybe you have been listening for over a year now, but you may remember last year's quote was an Erica Badu quote that would be comparing the music as an art form to the music business, and how it was different and how it was the same and stuff like that. This year, it's a Joni Mitchell quote, and the quote is from 2004, from an interview with Robert Hilburn of the LA Times. And she says, I heard someone from the music business saying that they are no longer looking for talent. They want people with a certain look and a willingness to cooperate. Joni later goes on to say that she doesn't necessarily agree with this, that she doesn't like this. Um, but Al, what are your first instincts when you hear this sentence?
So my first instincts are
Yeah.
that vibe beats experience. And I think more and more
Yes.
tours are
Yes.
doing truly what they call vibe checks.
Hmm.
Whenever I'm like interviewing for a tour,
Yes.
we talk about experience qualifications, and then it instantly gets into the vibe check. And I think what's really awesome about that is because it's recognizing how big tours can impact your life. We are living, eating, sleeping, working, playing with these people. We are doing everything with these people.
Oh yeah.
And it is so, so, so important to foster a community that's really healthy alongside that. And that can look different for every tour. Every tour can be looking for something slightly different. Um,
Yes.
but I think also there are just so many incredibly talented people in this industry. And the notion to like find the best, I think is a missed opportunity because so many people are incredible. And
Yeah.
I don't know if the best exists. We're all human, we all make mistakes. But I think what she was trying to get with that quote is that, sure, have the talent and professionalism enough to be able to do the job, but really focus on the other parts of what makes something successful. And that's the collaboration, the vibe, just
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
overall
Yeah.
like comfortability. And I
Hmm.
think more and more tours are trying to prioritize that.
Yeah. I think nowadays as well, it's you can be, whether or not you're a perfect match for like the role and the position, you got to be perfect. No, maybe not perfect, but you got to at least fit in with the people that you're working with, and the vibe that they're looking for and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And we've said so many times on this podcast that you're on stage like less than 10% of the day. So
Yeah.
it's like really your skill, it matters, but
Yeah.
but 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 mostly like 10% of it, like
Yeah.
to get the job, basically. And then once you get the job, then it's all about vibe.
Yes.
Most like, well, not necessarily, but to keep
It's a
the,
really big part.
it's a really big part of it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. How is the business part of your job or the music industry viewed on your end of things? Like, when I say music business, or, you know, sure, music business, what do you think about personally?
So, what I think about is the fact that, I'm in a very creative role. I'm in the
Yeah.
role of also interpreting people who maybe are less technical in their descriptions, but can like articulate a feel they want. I have to decipher what they actually mean. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of the people making some of the really big decisions are the people on the business side because this is a business. There's money
Yes.
involved. This stuff is really expensive. And I think that it should be a really intimate relationship between sort of like the business side and the creative side, because I think
Yes.
what can happen a lot of the time is the business side makes these big decisions, whether they make cuts or ads or changes, and don't quite have the expertise to understand what will actually be affected. What's
Yes.
the ripple effect of it? Whereas like that's what our job is, to come in and be like, okay, you need to save some money. So if you're trying to cut this whole truss, fine, but here's what's going to happen. We're going to lose this, this, and this. And I think that relationship really from the get-go needs to be filled with a lot of trust. I think as creatives, we need to trust that the people in the business part of the power do have our best interests and the show's best interests. But also, I think the business side of people really need to put trust in the expertise of who they're hiring creatively and listen to their opinion and understand that making these decisions will always have consequences. And
Hmm.
we sometimes have a lot more expertise in understanding what those consequences are going to be.
Fantastic answer. Yeah, I come back. I write down some notes here. I come back to it's the business people that are making like creative decisions a lot of the time, especially when you're coming in quite new, especially with a lot of artists nowadays, where we're seeing like a boom of new artists coming in because of TikTok and whatever, where it's like, yes, the creator, like the creative and the artist has a say in it, but a lot of the time, techs and creative supporters are really talking with the business people and the managers. So it's really interesting in that sense. Where do you think the industry is going?
Mm. Um, I think the industry is getting more and more conceptual with its production, which I think is so
Mm,
incredible to see. I think Scenic is becoming a huge part of tours. as well as like
Yes.
the integration of lighting, video, and scenic all working together in like from the beginning stages instead of sort of like doing their own thing and then seeing if they kind of work together.
Yeah.
I think a few good examples of this are like the 1975.
Yeah.
Like what they've created on stage is this entire, like it's a room that's a whole, like a house. It's like a
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
world.
Yeah.
And what's really cool is that like the TVs in that house, they've become lighting fixtures. And I think
Yes.
that's a really cool intersection of like scenic and lights. I think
Mhm.
another good example is the Chemical Brothers,
Okay.
which if you haven't checked out some of their videos,
No.
really, really highly recommend. They are hugely based on like really uh, interesting, trippy, weird content. But something that I noticed when I saw their show is like they would have this content and then they would have lights behind the video wall. Like there was one scene where it's like a robot and lights behind the video wall came in as the robot's eyeballs and would
Oh,
like
wow.
shoot their light beams out. And I think that was like a really good overlap of how
Yeah.
lighting and video can work alongside each other. And then the next tour I really want to highlight also is the AJR tour, who I love that band in general. I think they're just so fun and so imaginative. But I've
Okay.
seen how their use of like choreography, and I'm not really talking about dancing, but like placement of where the artist will go at a certain time,
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
create a story from like cover to cover. And they do so many illusions with their content where you don't really know if it's like a lighting shadow and you think it is, and then the shadows do something different. And so you're just,
Right.
your mind is just like kind of going on this whole journey. And I think those three are just like really good examples of where the industry is going. And I love to see it.
Yeah, innovation in regards
Yeah,
to like a bunch of different departments.
totally.
Um, this might be a little bit hot off the press, maybe not a hot off the press, but over the past like few months, we've been really talking to a lot of people on the visual side of the industry.
Mhm.
Not on the podcast, sorry for those listening. Just just
Yeah.
professionally and with eights and having a lot of meetings and stuff because we believe that the music part of a show, let's say, and the visuals part of a show are often disjointed,
Mhm.
non-cohesive. Um, and you mentioned lighting, video, and scenic. Um,
Mhm.
a quick question for you: would scenic for you be different than stage design, or does that fall into the?
No, I think you're right to also call it stage design. Stage
Okay,
design,
okay, good.
set, scenic, all of
Right,
that.
right, right. But anyway, we've been talking about how like there's a lot of people on that side of the world, lighting, video, and scenic or stage design, and a lot of people on the music side of the world, but they don't necessarily often coordinate or design together until production rehearsals, which for those who don't know, most likely a few weeks before the show, or the first show rather. Um, how important for you is the cohesiveness of a show, and how can that impact like the overall, of course, sort of creative vision of a show?
I think it's so important. I
Yeah,
think it is a work in progress in the industry. I think it's, at the beginning stages of designing for a show, we have basic conversation back and forth between departments, but for the most part, we're
yeah,
really honing in on our own thing. And then a lot of the time when we come together in rehearsals is the big bang of all of those
yeah,
ideas.
yeah, yeah.
Sometimes it can be this like beautiful merging and
Hmm.
sometimes it can be a big clash, it totally depends. I think also, like, you can listen to music on so many different platforms. You can see an artist on
Yes.
YouTube or whatever saying, but a concert is just an entirely different experience. And so much of that is because there's all of these other elements working
Yes.
alongside the artist. And I think it's hugely important to kind of bounce off each other, go back and forth if the artist, some artists and the team behind them really wants the artist to be the one that's highlighted, and the visuals are kind of a
Yeah.
backseat. And some people are totally different. And so there's not one way to do things. And to like, there's not one way to answer this question of like how
No,
there
of course.
can be integration. But I think, it does start from the beginning. And if it doesn't start from the beginning, then you are bound, it's like inevitable that challenges are going to arise, because gear is expensive. It takes time and energy to prep it, and making changes sometimes can be costly in
Yeah.
money, energy, time, all of that. But I think it's a work in progress, and I think that people are learning and growing. And I've watched, like I've been on different tours with the same artists where, the first tour, we learned a lot about integration. And so then we apply that to the next tour. And I think that it's a work in progress. We're doing our best. We're learning, we're growing, and it's going to get better. I hope so.
Yes. And yeah, we're trying to make it better, basically, is one of the things that we're looking at AIDS. So I guess, I don't know. I don't want to say stay tuned, but stay tuned. Are you seeing some new developments in the creative or not necessarily the creative industries, but just the music industry, maybe the live touring industry, that you're interested in? Some new things that are happening that maybe you haven't gotten the chance to work with yet, but you're like, holy shit, this is really cool.
Yeah. Well, I think my answer about like the integration of lighting, video, scenic kind of
Yes.
is that answer as well.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a lot of that. I'm also seeing a lot of interaction between the artist and the crowd. And I think that's really, really special. And it's something that I think Noah did a very good job at, is he really made the crowd feel very special.
Yeah.
And would speak to them on a very personal level. And I think that is one of the huge reasons why concerts can be so powerful, because you're getting to know the artist's personality a little bit. And I
Yeah.
think that, sometimes, sure, everyone has like a stage persona and all of that, of course. However, I also think a concert is the time that you're meeting the artist, in a
Yeah.
sense, whether or not you're shaking their hand, you're hearing their inflection and you're seeing their reactions real time. And I think I've definitely seen a lot more, not just no, I've seen definitely a lot more artists taking concerts as that entire experience for the artist, or for the crowd, I mean. And I love to
Yeah.
see that.
That's really great. Meeting the artist for the first time is very interesting as a concept in music, but also specifically in just the whole like live touring aspect, because that moment needs to be special. Um, anyway, I'm just just like thinking out loud.
Yeah, I love
Um,
it.
I, I want to get into the origin story here. Can you give me the lowdown on where you grew up and your creative upbringing? So, like family, friends, maybe high school.
Mhm. Totally. So, as I mentioned before, I grew up in Vermont, a small town in central Vermont, Montpelier, the capital, if you remember your fifth grade
Oh, there you go.
capitals.
I don't.
Yes. So grew up there. I was always the art girl. I have been drawing from a very young age,
Okay.
realism drawing, and that was always my biggest passion. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I ended up going to a like fine art conservatory for college in New York.
Great.
So have always been in the creative field. Never really was in like the theater world, like a little bit as a kid, but I feel like a lot of people think my job, like the origin would be being a theater girl or like a
Right.
tech person. And that really wasn't what I was doing. It was more like drawing and other types of art.
Sure.
Um, I have spent the last 6 years, like post college, in Boulder, Colorado. And that is really where my career kind of exploded.
Yeah.
Right. Which I'll tell you that origin story in a sec.
Sure.
Right now, I moved out of Colorado in July and I'm into a storage unit because I'm
There you
just
go.
touring so much, kind of like bopping around looking for my next place, traveling a lot.
Hmm.
But I have just so much to thank for Colorado because when I had said I went to art school and I absolutely hated it.
Oh,
It was
okay.
horrible
Sure.
4 years. And
Yeah.
I was pretty convinced that my love of art had kind of been lost in that whole process.
Okay.
Um, which is really sad.
Yeah.
And so when I left New York and moved to Colorado, I was really intent on like, okay, I know I have to do something creative. That's all I know and I love, but I don't want to draw or I was a double major in drawing and photo. And so I was like, I don't want to draw. I don't want to do photography anymore. Like, what is it? And so when I was 12, I had this friend who took me to my first concert at Higher Ground in Vermont because her uncle was the lead singer of Jimmy Eat World. And so we went to a Jimmy Eat
Oh
World,
my gosh.
my first concert.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
And we like went backstage on the bus, everything. And I remember looking at like the photos on the wall and being
Mm,
like, wow, that's so cool. I would love to do a band's like videography, photography, merch one day.
right.
Anyway, so that was when I was 12, went fully into art. That dream was just like really put to the side. But so anyway, finished art school. And I was like, what am I going to do with my life? And then
Hmm.
I kind of like revisited this dream and was like, okay, so I have to revise it a little bit because I don't want to do photo. I don't want to draw, but maybe I was right about the industry, the music industry, because I just
Right.
concerts so important to me.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I like researched venues in Boulder. The Fox Theater came up. I wrote to them just like, hi, I'm Alexandra, like wondering about your opportunities. Didn't get an answer, but it put that venue in my brain.
Sure.
And so then I needed a job quick, obviously, fresh out of college, no money. And so I started working at a coffee shop that had live music every night. And then someone one night dropped off 2 free tickets to a show at the Fox. Happened to have the night off. So my friend and I went, and we had absolutely no idea what genre the music was. I
Okay.
looked
Sure.
it up.
Yeah.
Turns out it was an EDM show.
Okay. Great.
And in short, that night changed my life forever.
Yeah.
I feel like in the past, I'm like, sure, yeah, I had an epiphany of this and this. And like, I have never understood what truly having an epiphany was until that night. It just felt like my entire life was like swirling around me. Like you were so close with the art. You were so close, but this is it. This is every integration. It's
Right.
illustrating music, it's painting with light, it's collaborating, it's
Okay.
hands-on, it's technical, it's everything.
Right.
And we left that night and I just turned to my friend. I was like, that night changed my life. And she's like, yeah, it was a cool venue, cool music. I was like, no, you have no idea. And the next day I went to that same venue, knocked on the door and begged them to hire me.
Wow.
And from then on, it's just that night changed my life. And I've been here ever since.
So do you remember like the exact, was it like when you guys entered the room? Was it like was it like you saw that the operator being like, "Oh my gosh, this is cool. This is what they're doing. This is like there's a job there. That's a role that I want."
No,
Like
I
what?
had no idea what
Okay.
role. So I
Right.
remember it was 3 acts. And so I didn't know it was 3 acts though. So the opener goes on. I don't remember much about like the first act, but then I
That's
remember
okay.
the second act goes on and I was losing my mind with the lights. I was just like, this is the coolest thing ever. And
Right.
they leave, and I am just like, all right, wow, that just changed my life. Time to go home. And little did I know that wasn't even the headliner.
Sure, sure,
And
sure,
so the
sure.
headliner comes on, and they have this like huge floor package thing. And so the lights are just like, well, I thought my brain exploded in
Yeah.
that band right before them. And then little did I know that the headliner was about to come on. But I remember there was one moment where I got so like terrified, like the lights scared me. They were like, I don't even know, but I just
That's
remember
funny.
being so like taken aback by them. And I think that moment was like, whoa,
Right.
do some cool stuff with lights.
So, okay, so the next day you knocked on the door and you were like, "Hey, can you give me a job in art, like in lighting?"
Yeah. So I got very, very, very lucky. The fact that the venues in Colorado, in Boulder, had an internship. And
Whoa.
yeah, really, really worked out in my favor.
Okay.
And so I said, I want to do the lights. I have no experience. And they said, okay, fine, we have a production internship. And so that's what I did. And from the get-go, like the production internship, you have to do everything. You're a stagehand first before you're in any specialty department.
Sure.
But if you kind of show that you're interested in one thing more than the other,
Right,
that's
right,
where you
right.
build connections, and they'll be like, okay, come, like you can run the openers, or like, let me show you this one thing. So I definitely got very, very lucky that that happened for me.
Wow. Can you talk about your path, like, excuse me, from like being at the Fox to like your first tour? Because that's probably a whole sort of period of time. Or usually it is. Sorry, usually
Yeah.
it is. Maybe not for you, but what was that path like?
No, it was a big path.
Yeah.
So I came in not knowing a lot about the industry, just like having this really big dream. So when I started at the Fox and Boulder Theater, they were two venues at same company.
Okay.
Um, I was so console based. I really wanted to learn everything I could behind the console. But what
Hmm.
I started to realize pretty early on into that internship is that I knew nothing about what happens if something goes wrong with a light. I know nothing about how to fix a light or like how to set them up. And so I sort of shifted gears a little bit and started doing
Okay.
more tech, lighting tech.
Right.
Um, and which was really great because a lot of the people that were really important in my early days, and they were all LDs, they would like bring me to gigs of theirs as their tech, and I could grow alongside them.
Right.
And so I started doing a lot of teching work, which again, I think is just, it was really, really, really huge and really important to understand that side of things.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah.
So I started working for bands, kind of locally, doing little runs with them. But my first tour happened because so a lot of the industry is networking based.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I don't really write cover letters or send out like job applications. It's like who you know and all of that.
Yeah.
And I had met a very, very close friend of mine now, Allie Blue, love her.
Shout
And
out.
shout out.
Yeah.
And she had a very similar path as me. She was an intern at these venues. And so a lot of people would compare me to her. And so
Okay.
I'd always just be like, who is this Allie girl? I ended up meeting her and we just clicked right away. And she was going on tour with Of Monsters and Men as LD. And they
Fantastic.
needed a tech. And she just gave me the gift of trust and brought me on that tour. And that was my first big tour. I had done like smaller things, but that I feel like is the first tour that really set touring as a career path for me.
Right. So let's say that show that you were at the Fox, the first show, were you saying that was 6 years ago?
No, that was in 2017.
Okay.
So
So let's say 7 years ago. And then when was that first Monsters and Men?
So of Monsters and Men was in 2019. I started working at the
Okay.
Fox in 2018. I
Okay.
had my first small tour in 2018
Okay.
and then was doing things. I also, something to note is I started working at like a vendor in Denver. So like a production warehouse, which I think
Yeah.
is something that's really, really enhanced my career, given me a lot of opportunities, a lot of connections, a lot of knowledge. And it's something I would recommend to anyone. A lot of people are like, shop work, nah. In my mind, it was just such a beneficial thing.
Yes.
But so I was doing a lot of shop work ahead of time as well, which can also lead to a lot of touring experiences. For me, my touring experience started with not that, but it was definitely helped when I got on that tour.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, and then from there on, it's just as you said, it's all relationships and building, connections and going from tour to tour and whatever, not whatever, but whoever,
Yeah.
rather. Fantastic. We wanted to get into the nitty gritty topics here, lighting, designing, and operating. Can you walk us through the initial steps you take when designing lighting for a new show? Specifically show, and maybe you can speak more to that.
Yeah. So I think every artist is different and every tour is different. You really have to look at kind of the technical parameters, I would say,
Yeah.
first. Budget, what
Yes.
size the show, what size of venues you're going into, how many trucks we're allowed to have, like physical gear and stuff. And so that's a really important part of our job, is to figure out those parameters
Yes.
first
Mm-hmm.
and then go into the creative aspect. I think every show that I've been a part of the creative process, it is just remarkable to see like where it starts versus where it ends up. Like there are just so many iterations, and
I'm
a
sure.
lot of it is based on like those kind of parameters coming back and like hitting us a little bit like, oh, okay,
Mm-hmm.
now we're over budget, stuff like that. Or we design something, we show the artist, they're like, want to make these changes. And so
Yeah.
it's like, it's truly, truly a process. I do want to touch on, I think I have a lot to say about when it comes to like designing a new song. Once
Yes.
those parameters have been established, you have the rig, you
Yeah.
have all of the technical elements in place.
The vision.
Okay,
Yeah.
now make a song out of it.
Sure.
And I think for me, I have definitely a process. So part of my love of lights is truly my love of music and illustrating music.
Yeah.
I also take so many walks a day, and they are so important for me because I'm always listening to music, and either I'm like working out some like heavy emotional stuff,
Sure.
or more often my walks are me just having like a full-fledged light show in my brain.
Oh
And
wow.
it's like, and that's a lot of like, when I think about going back to Noah before I joined that tour, I feel like I was designing him back in 2018,
Okay.
it was fully in there.
Sure.
Yeah. But so I don't know if you've seen the TV show The Queen's Gambit.
I have.
Um,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
okay, so like when she plays all the chess games on the ceiling, when I
Yeah.
saw that, I was like, that's me, but with light. And so it's really important for me. I think I really have to see it in my brain because I have to feel like I am the master of these lights. They are doing what I tell them to do. They are dancing with me when I dance, doing that, all of that.
For sure.
And then I get to the console. And it's a really, really good start for me to have it in my mind. It really creates good bones. By no means is it what always ends up being when I
Yeah.
get to console. But that's kind of where the fun comes in. I've done my walk. I've listened to the song on repeat for so long. I get to the console and I just kind of start to build what I was envisioning. And then it's like really honing in from there. And a
Yeah.
lot of it also is where the song is in the set.
Mm,
The whole set should really flow very cohesively, which
yeah.
can be interesting when an artist changes the set list up. You're like, oh,
Yes.
you wanted to save this big lighting moment for the end, and now it's
Yeah.
the first song. You really have to think of that. And so a lot of changes and just like perfecting little things are made. All of it is made once you get at the console. But for me, it's really important for my own creative process to kind of envision it first in my
Yeah.
head. And
Hmm.
I am their master. I am the wizard making all of them dance and do what I want them to.
That's fantastic. Do you think it's like a little bit of, well, I mean, there's been a thing, I mean, over the past, I don't know, maybe decade, but like synesthesia has been like a real thing and a real, like something that's been talked about. Do you think it's a little bit of that, or is it more because you have the experience and you've lived with lights for so long that you can really picture like a stage and what the capabilities of lights really can do?
I think it's definitely a little synesthesia. And I think your second point has only made the synesthesia visual imagination part more practical.
Yes. Yeah.
Before I
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
maybe wasn't able, I could see colors and just like big things, but not really seeing things as effects that then I'm like, okay, the phase is this and the width is this and like
Yeah.
the rate is this. And now in my head, I'm not only seeing it, but I'm like kind of building it
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
my head as well. And that
Yeah.
has come from like experience.
Fantastic. Just a few quick little fun questions here. What has been the most like challenging venue to design maybe, but also maybe operate in,
Mhm.
and why?
So, yeah, I think this question, I'm having a hard time kind of recalling if there's like one venue that's
Sure. That's fine.
been problematic. I think what's notable to me is that there's like very different types of touring, and it just like totally impacts your day, what it is. And so like if you're going into club touring, you're working with venues that have lights already in the rig, which can make the build part of your day a lot easier.
Yeah.
But it means you have to integrate lights that you either like or don't like into your design, which can be challenging. It can also make the show really fluid and have a lot of newness to it every night. So there's
Yeah.
like definitely beautiful parts about it. Then in shows, when you're getting a lot bigger and you go outdoors to like a lot of outdoor amphitheaters, there's a lot of beauty that comes with those types of shows. You're often getting your own rig,
Yeah.
your own gear that you're working with every night. But an issue you get then is you're working in the sun and you can't see lights in the sun. And so
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
your day becomes a lot of guess and check. And then usually by the time the sun goes down, it's changeover. And so you're
Yeah.
like updating all of your positions really
Sucks.
quickly, like quick to everything. And so
Yep.
there's so much beauty in getting to spend outdoor time,
Hmm.
in the summer and stuff, but then you're working with those challenges. Uh,
Yes.
and then you have like arenas, and oftentimes arenas, even though they're the biggest and can feel like super pressure filled, they're actually the most streamlined. It's your own gear. It's
Yes.
fun the same every night. And so in that sense, it can be kind of easy from a tech side of it. It's a lot of work to get all of those lights in
Yeah.
the
Of
air. But from an
course.
LED perspective, your day is kind of just like guess it, or like thinking critically of like what happened the night before, and you can like check a little bit. But in general, it should
Yeah.
be kind of streamlined. You can see the lights in the daytime because you're inside,
Yes. Yeah.
but then you're also inside in a cold arena and you're
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
bring me outside. So I think every venue has its own challenge. I don't think that there's a specific venue has struck me as like the most challenging, but those different types, they all come with their own unique challenges.
It's fantastic. I remember, I believe it was for Primavera with Charlie.
Mhm.
Which is 2 years ago already, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah. I believe like there's some festivals like Prima that like allow some artists like to sort of design like overnight. Is that typical?
Yes. I'm so glad you mentioned this.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
feel like those who really like know me as an LD will know I love overnight programming. I
yeah.
live for it.
Yeah.
Sure, it's like absolutely exhausting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Be like all in your cozy, gentle time, and then be like, all right, it's midnight. All I want to do is go to bed, but gotta go to work.
Yeah.
And so definitely that can be hard, especially then you have to like get up early and do a show. But
Yeah.
yes, overnight programming is huge, and a lot of festivals will give artists the chance to do that. And yeah, that is your time to come in and get your show to a good place. Especially festivals do that because you get a lot less time during the day because there's so many acts ahead of
Yeah, yeah.
you.
Oh yeah.
And so a lot of the time, if you are not the headliner, you don't get any time behind the console, and you just have to roll in and give it your
Just
best go.
yeah, just
Yeah, a
cross the
lot of
fingers.
that.
Yeah.
A lot
Oh
of that.
yeah. Fantastic. Um, let's say when you're walking in one of these festivals, you're walking around, checking out some shows, you see the program, you're like, oh, I really like this show or this artist. I've never seen the show. And you get to the stage or whatever. What inspires you when you see a show for the first time?
Mhm. Um, a lot of things. I
Yeah.
think for me, especially, I'm really inspired by color and a whole color story. Um,
Hmm.
And like a show that was really notable for me was Mumford and Sons in 2019. Their entire show, they only ever used CTO, teal, white, and red. And the teal and red were pops of it. It was mainly CTO and white. And I just found that so effective. And they very rarely would like overlap those colors. And I
Right.
just thought the intentionality of it really worked. Same with the 1975 again.
Yes.
I saw their show at a festival, and we were a bunch of us were at front of house, just absolutely having the best night of our life. And the
Sure.
entire show was all white. They never had another color. It was all white,
Yeah.
except towards the very end during one song, like one really big moment every single light turned red. And I remember like I was not expecting it.
Yeah.
I went to like this primal beast inside of me that was just like so feral for the lights. So I was losing my mind, screaming, dancing, and I was just like, that's so cool.
That's
And I was
hilarious.
so inspired to really be more intentional with color.
Yeah.
I love color.
Mm. And sorry, you mentioned a term earlier, and just wanted to highlight it because probably a lot of listeners don't know what that is. CTO, what is that?
Oh, yeah. So CTO is if you to make it kind of mainstream, it's like a warm tan. It's a it's a neutral, it's a neutral color. A lot of like if you
A
think
warm tan. Sorry, I like that.
if viewers have a lot of those like Edison bulbs,
Yeah.
like it's not a fluorescent bright white. It's sort of like a lot warmer. It's really good on skin tone. 2 CTO can be a little too yellow, but it's a very neutral. It's a lot of theater based
Yes.
productions use CTO
Hmm.
because it's not overpowering, and so it's kind of considered like a neutral in lighting.
A lot of like would you consider like a lot of like changeovers, maybe not a lot of changeovers, but like a lot of just like like standard theater lighting would be CTO?
Yes, white can be really harsh on
Yeah.
humans. And so a lot of people use CTO just to soften everything, give a warm glow. And white can still be used as like more effect based, whereas CTO is just like a really nice general wash to give like a beautiful warm feel on stage.
Fantastic. um Now I have this thing when designing shows from a musical standpoint, and stuff like that. Very inspired by a lot of people, a lot of musical directors, a lot of bands, a lot of artists. When you see something, let's say you see the 1975 doing the white CTO for most of the show and then red just at the end, and other examples. How do you implement ideas that you see from somebody else's show that impact you so much?
Mhm.
How do you implement those ideas into your own sort of, how do you put it in your bag kind of thing as a trick
Mhm.
is my
Yeah.
question. Yeah.
Well, I think that, we're in a creative industry and the creative industry is meant to inspire. And a
Yeah.
lot of people kind of can shy away from sharing their success. And like the word gatekeep comes up a lot. And I
Yes.
think something that I really, really want to be known about me as a professional is sharing success and inspiring and taking inspiration. I think it's a beautiful thing to be inspired by other people. And every show is going to give that inspiration new life.
Yeah.
And it's hard to replicate exactly how someone does something because the music is different, the parameters are different,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I think, when it comes to a full color story, oftentimes your show is programmed. You don't want to do these, you don't want to totally reprogram it with this like identical idea, but you can be really critical about like for color specific, being pretty minimal with color or not, or being maximal, is that a word? But
Yeah.
maximizing color. I think for me, a lot of inspiration I have is kind of like kept in my back pocket to be brought out in the right instance. Like
Yeah.
when I saw the 1975, I did not go back to my show with Noah and change
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. Sure. Sure. Sure.
Like it wasn't
Yeah. No.
that type of
Totally.
inspiration.
Yes.
But I really started to think critically on if I ever worked for an artist that's very open to something with that type of drama, that's a really good way to implement it.
Right.
Also, a lot of people like moving away from color, I think a lot of people do really interesting things with different lights. So lights have parameters of what they can do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've seen people do really, really interesting things with those parameters. I've seen a lot of people use X4 bars, which are these long pixel based bars with 20 cells each, or X4 bars 20 are. And you can do basic swipes back and forth, but I've seen people do really, really interesting things with them. And I think that's where it's fun and great to take inspiration from that, and that you can incorporate in your
Right.
show because no one owns specific effects. As I
No. No.
said,
No. Totally.
we're all in this creative industry, um, and I think it's really awesome to take what you just saw and see how it lives in a new space, and as well as like keep these creative ideas and inspirations in your back pocket for future shows.
Yes. And I think as creatives, we have like a duty, or we need to keep informed on what's possible,
Yeah.
because everything has they say everything has been done, but it's really important to learn more about what has been done, and what other people are doing, so that you can pull from that.
Yeah,
read different things, do different things, watch different movies, go to plays, do all these things
yeah,
to know what's possible. Because if you don't know that it's possible, you won't be able to pull it out of your toolbox or something like that.
totally.
Um, who are when talking about influences and going to see shows, do you have specific influences, let's say in the industry, maybe in lighting, or not? It can be like out of the lighting world as well.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I have so many influences. I think
Yeah.
an influence that is really exciting and kind of ever expanding to me is a lot of the like lighting install based influences. Like, for
Okay.
example, if anyone's been to Tokyo and been to Team Lab, or you know what it is,
Okay.
or if you haven't been there,
I have
put it
not.
on your list. It
Cool.
is this um, big installation where you like walk through many different rooms, and it's very, very um, like the effects and the lighting or installation processes are very affected by the people walking through them. For example, there's like a room with these like massive balloons that are lights, and if you touch them, they light up and make a sound.
Okay.
And there's like one room where you're in water up to like your shins, and the whole water
Whoa.
has this like projection and like low lying fog with like projection of lighting on it. And I think when I went there, I was just so inspired by the whole world that's created. And I
Right.
think that comes back to what I was saying, like at the beginning of like the integration of lighting, video, and scenic.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the more I see that, the more I get inspired to really branch out outside of just, oh, this light can do this cool effect. And this, it's like, okay, now what is this element working? Like, what set piece is really working with the lighting? I think if you're asking, like, if you're looking for people, someone I'm really inspired by is as Devlin,
Oh
who,
yeah.
yeah, we love her.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. And
um,
I'll,
Yes, and
I'll
if you
definitely,
don't know
yeah.
her, there's a show called Abstract. It was on Netflix. Don't know if it still is, but it highlights different people in like creative industries. And she is, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you
Well, no, please. I don't know that, but please finish. I'll
know?
add something after.
Okay, cool. So yeah, as Devlin is highlighted in like the production lighting design. And what's so cool about some of her work is again just, and she creates an entire world that is so much larger than lights. It's so much larger than LED. She does a lot with LED. It's the integration, it's the entire experience, the user experience. And I'm just so inspired by people who um, intersect all of those ideas together.
Just quickly on Ez because
Yeah.
she's the queen. Um, I'm a huge nerd when it comes to like learning new things and stuff like that. People, for the people listening, if you if you do or if you don't have a master class subscription, master classes like this, like basically this knowledge library online, and it's like people based, so it's like people have, and it's like lessons, so it's like um Questlove has one, Mark Cuban just put one out, there's a whole bunch, but Ez has one as well. It's like 4 hours with Ez Devlin, and it's really fantastic. It's all about her world and her process, and she takes you through her studio and what they do on the day to day, and it's just fantastic. And also for those who don't know as Devlin as well, she just did the whole the design for the Beyonce tour, and also the famous the first Sphere performance, the
Mhm.
U2 Sphere stuff. And she's a constant inspiration for sure. I haven't seen Abstract though. I took a note down.
Good, good. We should see it.
Fantastic,
Cool.
man. Okay. Um, I want to speak to something because I know that you've been in multiple roles on some tours. Can you speak to balancing being an operator, lighting director, design crew chief, lighting crew chief as well in an artist camp. Like, how have you been sort of juggling those hats?
Yeah. I'd say so much.
Yeah.
Um, as I feel like I've started most of these answers, every tour is so different,
Yes.
and the job of crew chief can look very, very different from one tour to another. I think
Hmm.
um, it's been really special for me to have worked in many different roles and not just gone right to LD or and have like branched out from being a tech or a crew chief.
Yeah.
Um, I'd say balancing it is really, it's a constant evolution.
Yeah.
I think you really like the relationship with your production manager. I want to really highlight on how important that is because lighting is a lot. It's a lot of physical work. It's a lot of long, long hours where the first one's in, the last one's out. And it can
Totally.
definitely be really overwhelming, especially if you are by yourself or understaffed, or even if not. But I think that your production manager is a really important person who is on your team, and they can really take a lot of the stress about how to navigate different like technical challenges. And I think really not being shy about communicating that you're struggling a little bit is really important.
Yeah.
But it's a constant challenge, evolution, and I'm still working on it.
Sure. 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 Yeah. Communication is totally key, especially with your road family, because everybody's just there to support each other, and the goal is all the same at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted to talk about the road, Al on the road,
Yeah.
specifically. Can you take us through a typical day to day when on tour for you?
Sure. Okay, so
You seem very
again,
excited about this. You seem
always.
very, yeah,
I
stoked.
love
Yeah.
touring.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. So it's very, very different depending on my job.
Yeah.
Um,
And on the tour. Yeah.
yes, and on the tour,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
I said. But truly being a tech or a crew chief, your day definitely looks different than being an LD. I would say
Yeah.
that, so if I'm talking about being an LD, um, with Noah, I generally, or even like Remy Wolf, I'll highlight her. I feel like haven't talked about her yet. I
Hmm.
pick up and we're the first ones in the venue, and we do what's called walk and chalk, which is walking around the stage, and it's usually like stage manager, rigger, production manager, all of the creative element, people who have to like hang stuff in the air and really figure
Yeah.
out where everything goes.
And
Um,
even I want to add as well, choreographer sometimes.
oh, totally. Yes, with Charlie. That's a good
Yeah.
one. Always
Nathan
had our
Kim,
choreographer.
shout out
Shout
the
out,
homie.
Nathan Kim.
Yeah.
Yes, he was always there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, walk and talk is a very important time for all departments to sort of like orient yourself around how the stage is going to look that day. And that's where you're kind of working with the like, oh, I need this much space. Well, I kind of wanted that. Okay, I can push here. So
Yeah.
that's important. Then coffee, very important as well.
Sure.
And then load in starts, and that load in, your job looks different for whether you're a tech, LD, crew chief, all that. As an LD, I found it really important to be there for the techs to test lights as they're getting plugged in and turned on. Um,
Right.
so even if you have sort of the morning to not be on stage, it's really important to just be on standby for them as they're getting ready, as things are going up. You have to be, a lot of the time when rigging, we put points in the air, and you're like, you have approved it during walk and chalk. And then you kind of see it and you're like, well, I kind
Sure.
of
Sure. Sure.
different.
Yeah.
And so it's really good to be there, kind of checking in throughout the day.
Totally.
Whenever I get front of house set up, which is where like my console is, oftentimes I get front of house set up before I have full access of the rig because what we call the Snake, which is like the huge cable that goes from front of house to stage,
Yes.
is not run yet. And so oftentimes I'm just kind of, I'll take notes the night before and I'm making little changes kind of in blind.
Right.
And then I get the rig, testing stuff. And then when everything is flown, that's like a really good time to let your tech, make sure your techs get fed, take the break they really need to. They've been working super hard all morning.
Totally.
And that's sort of where it's like my time as LD to come in and do my stuff. A lot of the time I can't quite have lights out yet. Backline is coming in, doing their thing. But a lot of the times I can get haze. And so I can start to like rough stuff in. And then we have sound check, and it's always got to be there for sound check. Sound check is great.
Yeah.
And it's a time for you not only to like make changes and do that, but really just to watch what the show is going to look like that day.
Yeah, sure.
And hopefully after sound check, you get a little break. And then you have doors, and then you have the show, and the show's so fun. We love the show. And then it's lockout.
Fantastic. Another fun question here, I hope.
Yeah.
What essentials must you always have with you while traveling on tour? Just some essentials, yeah, I'll
Oh,
leave
I
it
know.
there. Yeah,
So I feel like when I started touring, I was under the mindset of like, you have to pack super minimally, like really pare down everything. And
yeah.
totally, sure, you are living out of a suitcase. You can't bring your whole life. But what I feel like touring for a few years has really taught me is to figure out like what self-care items just make my experience so much better. So
Yeah.
like for me, I bring fairy lights and put them in my bunk because it makes my going to bed experience so much nicer. I
Yeah.
bring a milk frother on tour because having coffee that is really delicious and frothy makes a difference to my day. I
Yep.
know a lot of people have like weighted blankets, bring their own pillows. Um,
Yes.
bring your 10-step skincare routine if that's going to make you feel better. I think there's ways to pare down what you bring without settling on stuff that makes your day-to-day life harder. And I think figuring that out for yourself is really important. And for me, it was not skimping on those things that I had mentioned that kind of make just the daily part of living a little bit nicer.
Totally. Great answer. I bring my pillow on tour. That's what I bring. um, well, amongst other things, of course.
Yes.
Not just my pillow. What what advice would you give to someone new to touring as part of a production crew?
Yeah. I think the first thing I want to say is don't let your imposter syndrome stop you from trying.
Yeah.
I know my imposter syndrome is huge and has been my whole career. And I think that people have really related to me on that. And I think it's like really important to not let that scare you from giving things a go. Um, I think also truly be a sponge, especially if you're new. Something that's kind of been going on recently in my career is that my like day-to-day learning usually happens from myself. I'm kind
Yeah.
of figuring out the mistakes I made and learning from them and all of that. And that's a really cool spot to be in my career. I'm really stoked about that.
Yeah.
However, I also really miss learning from so many people all the time. And I hope that people don't take that part of their career for granted. And that's not to say like I feel like I'm constantly inspired and learning from other people as well, but on a more day-to-day basis, I'm not around other LDs during the show. I'm the only
Right.
LD in that
Right.
show.
Yes.
And
Yes. Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
and so that's why a lot of my learning is just coming from me.
Yeah.
And so I just would like totally encourage people to take this time in their career and learn from people, and also know that there's very few things that are like black and white ways of doing things in the
Right.
industry. Everyone has a different method. Learn them all. Don't take anything as like full on truth. You will figure out what works for you and what doesn't. But learning from people is such a gift. And we're in an industry where there's just so many incredible people to learn from.
Mhm.
And I hope that people are really excited about that time in their career.
Yeah, there's something about being in like a leadership position where it's like, oh shit, I'm the person that people are coming to for advice, and I can't, like, I'm now relied upon for all these things,
Yeah.
and I need to be so sure of everything that I'm doing, and I can't go to people for, day to day things. Of course, you can go to your production manager, you can go to other people, but not
Yeah.
necessarily somebody that's as experienced or as knowledgeable about your console, let's say, for instance, or like things like that. I
Yeah.
completely get that.
Mhm.
I wanted to touch on something before we play the game.
Okay.
Uh, as someone, and with eight specifically, we work primarily with women in artistic positions. A
Mhm.
lot of artists themselves that we work with, a lot of photographers, a lot of dancers, a lot of people on stage are women. But we feel like it's crucial and necessary to speak to the fact that there's a large gap in the industry in regards to women in the behind the scenes, or rather on the tech side of the industry. And I
Mhm.
believe it's really important to, speak about that, especially on this platform. I also want to be forward in that, of course. I haven't lived the experience that women live in the industry. As a white guy, that I do have some privilege in that sense. I also just wanted to speak to you about being a woman in tech, because you're the first one. And I, sorry, the first one, of course, that I have on this podcast.
No, yeah, not the first one. I get it. I
Yeah.
get it.
Um, which looking back, I should have, had more on this podcast, and I recognize that. But as a woman in in a predominantly male tech side of the music industry, what unique challenges have you faced, and how have you navigated them?
Yeah. Well, thank you for the question and giving the space.
Yeah, of course.
I feel like I have so much to say about it, and
Yes.
my my opinion is also constantly evolving based on like experience.
Yeah.
I do want to say that I think that the notion of like men do it better than women is an old school notion, and I feel very honored to work side a lot of men who have proven that they recognize that that is an old school notion that
Oh
holds no
yeah.
truth. I do think the industry is really opening itself up to diversity.
Hmm.
I do think that as women, some of the challenges we face are we're often judged a little bit harder. Our mistakes are blown to a bigger proportion, or people make us feel like because of our gender, like it makes sense we messed up a little bit, you know?
Right.
Um, and so I think that's
Mm.
something that women are constantly kind of navigating and working around, is just feeling like eyes are always on us, and they're like we have to prove ourselves that
Right.
we're worthy of being here.
Mm.
um, I think that what I've experienced is like a lot of tours will reach out to me looking for a female LD. And I think that's happening like all over the industry. And I only know it from a
Yeah.
lighting side. I'm sure other departments have that too.
Oh,
Um,
totally.
but
We
I
see it on
think,
stage as well.
yeah, yeah.
Definitely.
And I think that there's something really great about that, about wanting diversity and seeking it. What I want to kind of highlight about that, though, is that just because you have the diversity doesn't mean there's equality. And I
Mhm.
think that the work shouldn't stop there. It shouldn't stop once you have the women on tour. It should be about making them feel like not only were they hired because they're women, but they're hired because they're good at their job and they're
Yes.
worthy of having their opinion be recognized and requested. And so I think while the industry is opening up to diversity, we are still constantly navigating what to do when we have that diversity. And I have some beautiful examples of how I've felt really appreciated, and I have some examples of how I haven't. And I think every woman holds that duality within them.
Sure.
But I think it's a superpower to be a woman on tour. I love it. And I love how many other incredible women I've met in tech roles. And we're out there. We're
Yeah.
not, even though there's still like a lot more men in these roles, we're out there.
Oh yeah. Can you speak to a couple of these examples of things that have happened, or things that you've seen that have successfully tackled or improved this sort of these challenges, this issue, this reality rather in the industry?
Yeah. I think so much success comes from when women support other women in these
Yeah,
roles.
sure.
I think there can be this idea that when there's very few of us, it's like this competition of to be like the best woman. And I think that no, like we gotta stop. That's
Sure,
so
sure, sure.
that's done. And I have found just such success with kind of supporting other women, both in person when you meet them, like at a festival or whatever, but also like so much of our platform, because it's networking based, it's online,
Yeah,
and really supporting people in how they show up, how they present their work, I think is really incredible. And I think has made a huge difference in how we are perceived if we are lifting each other up instead of competing to be the best woman. I think also, like, for me personally, I hold a lot of duality in my personality. I think that a lot of people have like the generalized terms to describe women as like, she's such a badass, she takes no shit, like she tells them how it is. And I think while a lot of the times, sure, okay, you can say that. That's not really the full story. And I don't think it leaves room to be a little bit more complex as a
sure.
person. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
not just a woman thing. I just think that like everyone's complex. We're all human. But I think women kind of feel it very hard in this industry. Like I think for me, I'm very bubbly, I'm sensitive, I'm passionate. I will fight for what I think is right, but also be overly empathetic when people push back. And so I sometimes don't know if just generalizing these terms just because you're a woman in the industry, it doesn't mean that you're this like hard ass, takes no
Right.
shit, that type. I think there's not only diversity in gender, but there's diversity in personality. And we have to let each woman's complexity and
Yeah.
multiple vibes based on situation really be okay and be allowed to like take up space.
Yeah. Flourish. Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
flourish.
In what ways do you think the industry could improve, supporting women in the industry? And I asked this as well, notice knowing that there just needs to be just more. But
Mhm.
it's hard to just say that, there needs to be things that are done about this.
Yeah.
So in what ways do you think the industry can improve that?
Mhm.
And just general support for the women that already are in the industry, and it's specifically, and how could I improve? How could AIDS improve? How could the whole industry improve?
Well, I will say for starters, I think the fact that you've given me the space to talk is great. And
Oh yeah,
that's incredible. And so that's what you're doing and should keep doing. And I feel very lucky to have that. I think, small change leads to big change.
yeah,
And there is not one way in which this diversity issue is just going to be solved. I think you're right in the fact that there just needs to be more diversity. I do think though that I've less and less I'm seeing crews that are all men. I
Totally.
think
Yeah.
more crews are really starting to understand how important it is, not only for the crew experience, but also for the show goer, to experience women in these roles.
Yeah.
You know, the amount of times that after a show when I'm LDing, someone will come up to me and talk to me and kind of point out the fact that it's so wonderful that they're seeing a woman on stage or in this role, and then look on stage and see like more women, and they are just like really, really moved by it.
Yeah.
I think remembering that a lot of people who go to concerts are women. And,
Yes.
everyone goes to concerts also being everyone also being women.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it's a constant evolution of this industry, but I do think we're going in the right direction. I also think that something that people in like leadership roles, whether that's like production management, tour management, artist management, can do is ask us our opinion on things. A lot of the time, we have past experiences that make us feel like our opinion isn't valid, or people are going to take it the wrong way. And so I feel like we are less likely to offer up our opinions sometimes. Um, and it's really awesome to be asked by someone in a power position what we think of things, especially if, being an LD is in a position of power.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so to feel like I can own that power and my opinion matters and it means something is really special. And sure, that comes with some like self-reflection and like, self-security, but it is very much helped by other people.
Yeah.
Giving us the space to really listen to us and what we have to say.
Fantastic. I want to wrap it up with the Dreamfest game. Sort of a weird transition there, but for those who don't know, and for those who are the first or listening to this podcast for the first time, we play a game at the end of every episode. This week, I thought it would be great to ask Al about her dream festival lineup. Basically, asking her who the headliner would be, the second headliner, the opener, so 3 acts, where this festival would happen and when, as in like when in the year it would happen, the capacity, as in is it a small show or is it a huge show? Food or beverage that would be served specifically for this event, maybe something that represents Al in this case. And what could the lighting look like for the headliner? So Al, please take it away on your
Oh man.
Dreamfest game. I know this is this is quite a turnaround here, but
Yeah, no, I love it. Okay. Headliner. I've
yeah,
talked about them earlier on. I would love AJR to have the spotlight. I think that they are just so fun. And I've seen their show once, and the crowd absolutely goes wild for the whole world they create. And I think having a whole festival that lets them live in their own little world and do their thing would be really cool.
nice.
Okay, my second headliner
Yeah.
would be Glass Animals.
Oh, wow, yeah.
um, I also think their music is very imaginative and also can really create different, just take you out of where you are in that moment. And I think they do this with a lot of different like musical techniques that I love.
Yeah.
And I would love to see how AJR and Glass Animals, which they're very different artists,
Yeah.
but I think they, in like where they overlap is like their passion for their specific style. And so to have these two very passionate artists kind of like work together to create a whole scene would be really cool.
Fantastic.
Okay, and then opener. Let's see. My gut instinct is to go with someone like Chelsea Cutler,
Okay.
because I think that she is I think her lyrics are really beautiful. Her use of instrumentals in her songs are really powerful. Her use of electronics in her songs and working
Great.
alongside of them is unique. And I would love to see how she sort of like sets the scene and brings people in and like slows everyone down. I think festivals, you're like running all over the place and you have to really settle in to the show. And so I would love her to just like make everyone stop, listen, bring us up to then this like explosion of creativity from these other artists.
Fantastic. Where and when would this festival happen?
This festival would happen where Primavera Barcelona happened.
Yes, literally one of the best nights of my life.
I know, it was so good.
Yeah.
Because it was right along the beach.
Yeah.
And it was just so cool to have the waves crashing along, the left side of you, while the right side is like all of the cool art installations and food. And then right in front of you is the stage. And I just love a festival that takes you out of like your small town or your city or whatever and just brings you to this kind of like epic landscape. So
yeah,
that was very fun. And I knew you'd relate to that.
Literally, it's been mentioned on this podcast so many times, but probably like top 3 nights of my life, probably.
I agree.
Yeah. And probably in the summertime.
Yes.
Yeah,
definitely.
Fantastic. So it would be a big festival then, if we're talking capacity.
Yeah, why not? The more the merrier.
Perfect. And then food or beverage that would be served specifically for this event. Do you have like a specific item or that you like, food or beverage?
Totally.
Funny addition.
Let's see. Lots of oat milk. If we're talking beverages. we love like oat milk, chai lattes. Like give the people some good caffeine.
Yeah.
Which we love. I think, a beverage that I think I want to see more in the summertime is coffee lemonade. I've had it at a few different places, and every time people are like, this is so disgusting. When they try it, it's so good. And it's just the perfect, refreshing little bevy to have. If you want to do a little spike in it, sure, do that. Choose your own adventure.
Sure.
But let's get creative. Let's mix different mediums like we're doing on stage and mix the coffee and lemonade, which, you might not think work together, but it's really going to be a treat. And for food, I would like to see an entire ice cream trough of just all different ice cream flavors.
Great.
And you can like mix them too, to go with this mixture vibe. And tacos. Lots of fun tacos.
This sounds like a great festival. And lastly, sorry, before this last one here. No, it's fine. It's fine. I was gonna say I'm just not a big coffee drinker, so I don't get you out the coffee and lemonade.
What about
I'll have to try. No, you can. That could still be your answer. Sorry, that could still be your answer. Yeah. But what were you gonna say?
For what?
No, but for that, you were gonna add another beverage.
Oh, I don't know.
It's fine. It's okay. What would the lighting look like for AJR?
epic, obviously.
Yeah.
I would like to see the lighting extend far past the stage and bring it out into the crowd and have different moments um, in just different areas of the venue highlighted during those songs, and just have it be like more of a 360. I want you to turn around and be able to still watch an epic show.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, that's how we wrap it up.
Cool.
I want to thank you for being my guest on this week's episode of the Cloud Machine podcast. It was so insightful to know a little bit more about you. Yes, we've spent some time on tour together. We've seen each other, at some of the shows that you've done over the past year. But no, just to learn more about your day-to-day process, and how your influences, how you go about things, and also your testimony, your experience of being a woman in tech was very great. So thank you.
Thank you. Such an honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. For those listening, please make sure to check her out. Check out her Instagram at a Alexandra Rose on Instagram.
2 A's.
2 A's, yes. A Alexandra Rose.
Someone stole Alexandra Rose, so
it's all right.
Right.
It's all right. I also want to thank those who have been listening to the podcast. It is the 64th episode of the Cloud Machine podcast. I believe the next time you'll see us, this is coming out next week. We're recording ahead of time, but I'm going to be gone. So this will, over the next month of the Cloud Machine podcast, it's all going to be some pre-recorded stuff. So I hope you have fun with that. We like to keep this platform as interactive as it can be. So please leave your comments, questions, and reviews below. Please don't be shy about that. And don't hesitate to subscribe to get the notifications. Our goal here is to really share experiences and different roles and responsibilities in the music industry, because we believe that it is so gate kept. Now there's this big curtain, not only on stage, but off stage as well. And it's just really important to share this knowledge base with the people. So please share it with your friends. As always, stay safe, everybody, and see you next week. Bye.